to technology. This is working quite well.
That recording started.
Many thanks, Connie. Could I begin by making the usual appeal? If you're not speaking, pop your microphone on mute, lest we get any feedback loops going. And well, I'll welcome you to this sitting of the board, the 26th of June, this beautiful sunny morning. Douglas, do you want to do a roll call of who's present, or is that not necessary anymore?
No, I'll do that. We have present today Councillor Andy Steele, convener, Councillor Bill Brown, Councillor Jane Strang, Councillor Jennifer Adam McGregor, Councillor Michelle Campbell. Have I missed any councillors? I think that's all that are here in terms of councillors. Yeah, and we have apologies from Councillor Hood. And beyond that, convener, just to confirm for the parties present, we have in terms of officers, myself, Douglas Campbell, Assistant Managing Solicitor Licensing and Deputy Clerk, Mark Connaughton, Legal Services, Legal and Democratic Services Manager is here as well. Connie Lamb is here, Administrative Assistance. We have Duncan Pole from ICT, and we have, I think, Colin Dixon is in the meeting, and Ruth McCallum.
Many thanks, Douglas. Do we have any declarations of interest this morning? There will be no declarations of interest. We'll move on to the first item of business before us, which is an application for a major variation from Aldi's to Printers Place, Paisley. Douglas.
Thanks, convener. The first application is an application for major variation for Aldi, and they're seeking to change their licence by adding in click and collect and deliveries to it. There's also an amendment of layout to increase capacity slightly from 29.00676 to 32.7680 square metres. And there's also a police representation which seeks the policy conditions relating to deliveries and two other conditions. I think Mr. McDougall and Mr. Feely may be here for this item. Is that correct, Mr. McDougall?
Yes, that's correct, Clerk. Me and Mr. Feely are in attendance today.
And can I just check that the police are actually, I'm not seeing them on the screen. Is the sergeant here?
Nobody here. Okay, well I think we can proceed without Police Scotland. We've got their letter of representation, don't we?
If it assists, Your Honours, we're happy to accept the conditions if that perhaps help matters.
Okay. In that case, I think we'll just begin, Mr. McDougall.
Thank you, Convener. So, like I say, the conditions proposed by police are accepted in their entirety, no issues there. And I'm sure Aldi as an operator will be very familiar to Your Honours. I'm very happy to recap matters, and you can let me know if that would be helpful. The application relates to their store in Printers Place. I'm pleased to say the premises are actually will be undergoing an extensive refurbishment, and as part of this refurb, the alcohol fixtures and fittings are being replaced with new models, and as a result of this, the alcohol display has been increased by about 4 square metres to 33 square metres. And the refurb is part of Aldi's ongoing commitment to its Scottish stores to make sure that the stores there are quite simply the best possible for their customers. So we'll see investment in the store, and that means investment in local construction firms, etc. And also, I'm pleased to say that will be new staff recruitment. And as you know, Aldi pays the living wage. As well as the increase in alcohol capacity, the applicant's taken this opportunity to do some future-proofing, if you like. Aldi are moving to operate a click and collect service for some stores in Scotland, and this rollout has been largely driven by how shopping habits have changed during the pandemic. I'm sure you all have seen similar applications over the past couple of months. In terms of how click and collect will work, there will be 2 allotted car parking spaces within the car park. The customer will alert staff to the fact they're at the store ready to collect their shopping at the allocated time, and the staff will attend the vehicle, and after checking the customer's identity in terms of the contract, the member staff will then deliver the shopping to the car and that'll be that. Where alcohol's included, Challenge 25, of course, will be operated, and with ID being requested and any refusal being added to the refusal register in the usual fashion. So it will operate very much just the way the alcohol sales work in store. The permission's also sought for home deliveries, and to be quite frank, there's no immediate plans for that in this store. However, I can say that conditions proposed by police are of course accepted, and as well as Aldi are well aware of the statutory terms of home deliveries, etc., and that will all be complied with. It's been rolled out in other stores in Scotland, and it's worked well with no complaints. Given that Aldi do not cause us any issues, and the fact that conditions are accepted, I'll say no more and move grant subject to any questions.
Many thanks, Mr McDougall. Do any members have questions or comments on this application? Just take a moment and see if any slow hands go up, but I can see no questions or comments. I'll give you the chance to sum up, Mr McDougall, if you wish.
Given there's no questions, Your Honour, Convener, I'm happy just to move grant.
Many thanks. I would agree. I think this is straightforward enough application. I would move that we grant it. Members agree.
Can I just confirm, Convener, that's with the additional conditions of the police or the conditions that the board has in terms of its policy?
Well, I think the one excuse me, the conditions of the board are covered in the police, but yes, grant subject to the conditions of the board and the conditions accepted by the applicant as put forward by PS. Councillor Brown.
Hello, Andy. Not to deal with the previous case, but can we have one of the officers contact the police for any of the future cases that are coming up?
Yes, absolutely. Let's tidy this one off. Are we happy? Douglas, is that okay for the Aldi?
Absolutely. Just to confirm, Connie is in get in touch with the police just now. I think they'd actually been in, it would appear, but we're not sure why they left.
Okay. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have proceeded without them, Bill, but the police representation was accepted by the applicant, so there didn't seem to be any.
So there was no problem there.
Absolutely. Okay, that completes that item, Mr McDougall and Mr Foley. Thank you very much.
Obliged, thank you, Your Honours.
Confirm, Convener, that's Councillor McIntyre in as well.
Good morning, Councillor. Just take a moment while we change over. Mr Dixon's face appears and people come back in, and we move on to the second item, which is another application for a major variation from the cooperative 93 Paisley Road. Douglas.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, it's another application for major variation, and it seeks to change the operating plan to include home deliveries. I should say, Convener, that a written submission has been lodged by Hill Brown solicitors, and it's also been confirmed to me by the agent Aileen Maguire that there's no issue in accepting the delivery conditions in terms of the board's statement of licensing policy.
Many thanks. Is Ms Junior representing?
Yes, it's a written submission that's in members' packs, though, Convener.
Ah, I see. Sorry, I didn't quite grasp that. Okay then. Given that we've had prior sight of that and members will have had a chance to read it, do members have any questions or comments on this application?
No.
See any indications? Which is ideal. I've never had a written submission from an agent before. Do I afford a chance to sum up a written submission, or do we move straight to a disposal?
If you're quite comfortable, Miss Junior speaking, I'm sure nobody would take any issue with it, given nobody's got any issue with the application, my lord. A rare treat indeed.
Ely did choose to deal with this one by written submissions, as we've been doing that a lot with these quite simple, straightforward major variation applications. We didn't actually expect my application to boil so on today, which is the reason I'm here. But as you said, there's no questions or anything, so I would move grant of the application.
Thank you, Ms Junior. Yes, again, this is a entirely straightforward application. As far as I can see, I have no issue with it whatsoever. I would move that we grant it. Are members agreed? Subject, of course, to the board's conditions. Members agreed. Thank you. We'll move straight on then, since I fancy the next one's going to follow much the same procedure, which is also the cooperative 60 to 62 Neilston Road. Again, written submission on page 12 of your packs. Do members have any questions or comments on this application? There being no questions or comments, I would again move that we grant this application subject to the post standard conditions and home delivery.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Completes that item. We move on to item 4 this morning, which is another major variation, an application from the Northern Way, 13 to 19 Cossey Side Street, Paisley. Douglas, who does that?
Thank you, Convener. Just to confirm in relation to this, this is an application for major variation as well. The variation seeks to include outdoor drinking as activity during and out with core licensed hours. Obviously, alcohol wouldn't be sold out with the core licensed hours. And there's an amendment to the layout plan to include the external drinking area. By way of background, the premises have traded their external drinking area by way of occasional licences recently. There are a number of parties in this case. There are, before members, objections from Bryony and Andrew O'Neill, from Jamie Howie, from Catherine Perry, from Pamela Howie, from Barry Wilson, and from Kevin Quigg. There is also a request from Police Scotland. They've got no objections to it, but they have requested a 9 p.m. terminal hour for the external area. And capacity has been agreed between the Building Standards Department and the applicant at 48 persons for the external area. Convener, I would propose to identify the people present first. In addition to what you have in your paperwork before you, I can confirm that those who have indicated they're attending the meeting today in person are Pamela Howie, Andrew O'Neill and Barry Wilson. The application itself was advertised in terms of the site notice that was put up, and the site notice obviously refers to the existing licensed hours of the premises. So I would suggest, Convener, that once identify that those objectors are here and that there's nobody else here for the matter, that simply there's a brief opportunity for the agent, Miss McDougall, to summarise what is being sought for the benefit of parties present before they speak. And also to just double check, Convener, there are no preliminary issues in respect of this matter. So can I just identify that Pamela Howie is here today?
Yes, I'm here.
Can I confirm that Andrew O'Neill or Bryony O'Neill are here? Hello, Andrew O'Neill. No, I don't see them in the meeting, Convener. Certainly they were anticipating being here. And Barry Wilson, I can see, is on the screen. Mr. Wilson, you confirm just that you're here for the item as well?
I'm here.
Thanks, Mr. Wilson. Can I just double check for completeness then that that we don't have here Catherine Perry or Kevin Quigg or Jamie Howie? Right, I've not missed anyone. That's all I'm really trying to establish. So it would appear not. So on that basis, just to confirm, if the agent, Miss McDougall, has a chance to just briefly clarify what has been sought in terms of the application to benefit the parties present, then what would happen is there'll be a chance for the parties to summarise, to basically set out their position. So the objectors and the police would have a chance to speak. There'll be a chance for the applicant to reply to what's been said to them. And thereafter, there'll be an opportunity for board members to ask questions. Then the objectors to basically summarise their position. For the applicant, that's Mr. McDougall and his clients, to summarise. And then the board may go into a private recess, but we'll come back into session and invite all parties back into the meeting before any decision is made. Hopefully that's fairly clear. Ms McDougall, would you like to give a very, very brief overview at this stage as to what is being sought here for the benefit of all parties?
I fear you're on mute, Mr. McDougall.
Thank you, Convener. You should be able to hear me now. Hopefully that won't happen again. So anyway, by way of introduction, I'm here and I'm accompanied by the area manager, Mick Beaver. And in terms of application, the application is, in a way, relatively straightforward. It seeks only permission for outdoor drinking areas for a beer garden to the rear of the premises. The beer garden would be accessed from and to the premises, and the terminal hour of 9 PM as proposed by the police is accepted. And the maximum capacity will be 48 persons.
Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to proceed. Douglas?
Yeah, convener. So if you're happy then to hear from the parties present, so we've got Pamela Howie, Andrew O'Neill and Barry Wilson, so they would have a chance to speak about what's in their objections. There is one other preliminary matter I should raise with Mr McDougall as well. There was an email last night sent by one of the parties present, Pamela Howie, which was sent directly to all parties in the meeting at the moment. So in relation to that, Mr McDougall, do you oppose that being placed before the board? I think you've been copied in on it.
Yes, I received that last night. What I will say, as your honours well know, it's a matter for your honours, and there has to be good cause as to why objection is accepted late. I don't see the letter, the email as setting out why it is late, and to be honest, having looked at the material, I'm not sure why such material has been lodged late, but it's a matter for your honours, that's all I have to say on that.
And in terms of the legal position, convener, certainly, I mean, the material that's lodged by the objectors should have been lodged at the time the objection was made. The board does have some discretion to take it late, can basically treat the objection as being made despite the fact it wasn't received on time. And obviously that'd be a matter, I suppose, for Ms Howie then, if Mr McDougall's opposing it, to explain her position. And I think it would be appropriate to give Ms Howie the opportunity to explain why it's been lodged now at this time. I should say, for the benefit of Ms Howie and other parties present, that this has not been, well, it's not currently been admitted before the board, and it should have been sent to the licensing mailbox if anything additional was proposed. There is an opportunity for parties that are coming to participate in the meeting to do so where we have written submissions. So, I mean, it could have been that Ms Howie could have put in something to kind of bolster up what she'd already said in the original objection, but not to be raising new matters. So I think it would be appropriate, convener, to let Ms Howie explain why the papers have been lodged at this stage. And obviously there's nothing to circulate that's already been emailed to members, but nonetheless, I suppose it's a matter of whether the board will formally decide to have regard to those papers or not.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Ms Howie, are you comfortable with what you're being asked to do at the moment?
Yes, yes, I am. So I think what I kind of realised was there's no one really come out and had proper site visits due to COVID. I'd spoken to one of my neighbours and they'd explained that was the situation after speaking to someone in the council. And I think we really need to go back to the very basics of this and look at, the health and safety aspects. So that's why I wanted to highlight that, the proximity of the garden area to this proposed beer garden. I think if you actually look at the photographs, it highlights how close it is to a residential garden area.
Okay.
So I only found this out later, that there's not been proper site visits conducted by any parties.
Many thanks for that, Miss or Mrs Howie. I apologise if I'm getting your title wrong.
Miss.
Miss, thank you. Take a wee moment to explain my thinking, just so you get the reasoning behind what I'm thinking on this. This board is what's known as semi-judicial or quasi-judicial, and as much as decisions we make can and quite often are here and in other authorities taken to the Sheriff Court for challenge, so it goes into full legal. We have to be absolutely consistent in every item we get, that we follow the same procedure, lest we'd be accused of, favouring one party or another. And it's for that reason that we, as councillors, as elected members on this board, receive our information packs only shortly before the meeting. And that's basically, we get the paperwork, everybody gets the same thing, everybody knows what's coming when we go to the board, and it's kept on that level. And for that reason, I'm not inclined to accept your late submission. And it's not in, I haven't actually read it, it's not in any way a reflection on the point you're making, which I'm certain you're going to amply cover in your representations when your turn comes when we discuss the matter anyway, it's merely because we have a procedure we follow, and direct submissions to elected members just before the board is not the procedure that we follow. Again, I want to make it quite clear, I'm not criticising what you put in it, I haven't seen it, I don't know what's in it, but it's just the procedure we follow. Other members may disagree with me, but I'm going to propose that we don't accept this late submission from Ms Howie. Do members agree, or do any members wish to take a different position?
I'll second that, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are we happy to agree not to accept late submission?
Agreed.
Agreed.
I see nothing contrary to that. Okay, Douglas.
Okay, well, the hearing then proceeds, convener, on the basis of what you have before you. So the board will have before them, obviously, all 6 of the objectors received, and also the police letter. So it's now for the board convener to hear from the police and to hear from the 3 objectors that are present orally, and then obviously to give Mr McDougall a chance to respond. And then obviously the procedure is normal: questions, opportunity to sum up, and then obviously decision with or without a recess first.
All right. Chief Inspector, floor is yours.
Good morning, all. With regards to this application, the only questions, only request from ourselves is with regards to the time that the drinking outside ceases, which is 2100 hours. Again, that's just to reduce noise pollution and antisocial behaviour. It's something that we obviously ask for across the board, and it's not specific to this particular premises. So from Police Scotland, that is the request that we have.
Thank you, Chief Inspector. I'll just come to the 3 objectors who are with us in no particular order, but Ms Howie, would you like to go first? Ms Howie?
I think Miss Howie's on mute, convener. I think.
I don't have her on the screen, so I
Yes,
don't
she
know.
is, Douglas.
We can't hear you, Miss Howie, you're on mute. Mr Wilson, would you like to go while we try and sort this out?
It's okay.
Sorry, I've just got carpet fitters arriving. Apologies.
Everything at the one time, of course. We can hear you now. No, we can't.
Mr Wilson, could you go ahead? I've just got the carpet fitters at the door, sorry.
All right, that's much more important. Okay, I've got 5 points to make. Ryan Green, and they put a 2.3 metre high fence 3 metres from the front door of flat 1.
Mr Wilson, would you mind starting again? Your audio cut out just as you began and we missed the start of what you said.
Really? For goodness
Well,
sake.
I did. No, I think you're fine
That's
now.
okay. Amber Taverns annexed to Ryan Green. They built a 2.3 metre high fence 3 metres from the front door to flat 1. They gave us no warning of this. Now, I now understand that bit of ground belongs to Amber Taverns, but I'm unimpressed with the attitude of the company in that they didn't consult us in advance. 2 weeks before I realised they'd built the fence. 3 metres in front of the front door to flat 1. The residents here, they've been increasingly using the garden this year, probably because Andy in flat 2 has done a lot of work in the garden. And we've been sitting out in it, avid friends here, and we've had a beer. The 5 younger children in our block, they regularly play in the garden. And politely I say, we don't need cigarette smoke and bad language from right over the wall. With Pamela Howie, I have a lot of sympathy. She's round the corner from us, but she's got 2 young grandchildren that play in her garden, and again, it's just over the wall from the proposed beer garden. That's my second point. What really bugs me, I'm sorry, I would like to know what happens to the 13 metres of what was our drying green that is not shown on any plans. The property director of Amber Taverns said in a letter to me, Amber Taverns may be willing to offer some of our land for a laundry drying area to the residents if we obtain planning for a permanent beer garden. I don't speak for the other residents, but I don't want a beer garden to be licensed so close to our garden, whether there's a bribe or no bribe to make us accept it. 4, if a license is granted, and this could be true or not true, I would imagine if there's antisocial behaviour, if there's bad language, I'm quite sure you and the police will be sent videos of it. I've been in the pub maybe 12 times and the pub is fine. I don't have a problem with the people in the pub. Outdoor beer garden, I don't know how it would go, but it's very, very close to us. And the last point is that what Pamela sent last night was photos of the back door. And it wasn't to argue her case. I think it was useful general information. And it was only in the very last day we could object that I saw the notice in the pub. It would be good if some people from the licensing board could come and actually look at the site. The plans don't do enough to give you an idea of it. And I think to make a decision, you really would have to look at the site. Maybe someone has, I don't know. I don't know if you've any questions of what I've said. That's my lot.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll hear from everybody and then we'll open the floor to questions.
Okay.
Do we have Mr. or Mrs. O'Neill come into the meeting? The other objectors have indicated they would be present this morning. Does anyone know?
If you want, I can speak at the moment.
That would be grand, thank you.
Okay, so again, I mentioned my biggest concern is it's a health and safety issue to myself and to my grandchildren who play in the garden. This is a residential area, although it's in the centre of town, and I do believe moving forward the council are wanting to progress with bringing more people into the town to live. That's the future plans. So I don't think this beer garden is a good idea at all for anyone. As I say, this is a residential area. There's a lot of families that are literally playing just over the wall. I think, again, it's a duty of care to the residents that this does not go ahead. I'm also working from home, so there's a noise element to that. My office is at the back of the building, so therefore any noise is going to be impacting my day-to-day work. Also, for example, if it's a nice day and you like to take your laptop into the garden, that would be an impossibility. I think it would lower the whole tone of this environment, which has been great. I've owned this flat for 23 years. I also see it would affect house prices with a beer garden directly. I know you don't want to take into consideration the photographs, but I agree with Mr. Wilson in saying that I think a full site visit needs addressed by the council to look at the proximity and the health and safety issues that could or will happen.
Okay.
I think I feel we need to review this from the start.
Okay, I'll address that when we get to questions. Miss Howie, just make a quick note.
There's also the smoking element, swearing, like Mr. Wilson mentioned. Again, it doesn't bode well with small children and babies, literally over a garden wall. There could be things thrown over. I personally have seen some of the clients that are going in and out of the establishment. It is literally just a boozer. It's not a family-friendly pub. It is literally a boozer with cheap drinks, where I've seen known alcoholics who were drinking in the street are now progressed to drinking in the pub itself. So that kind of sets the tone as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, is that you complete, Miss Howie?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Connie, can I try one more time? Do we know if Mr. or Mrs. O'Neill have entered the building, or Douglas?
I was just going to say, convener, Connie has confirmed to me that Ms. O'Neill isn't able to come.
Thank you, much appreciated. Okay. Mr. McDougall, can we hear from you on behalf of the applicant, please?
Yeah, convener, thank you. So as you all have heard, this is application to introduce permission for a beer garden. Especially given the nature of objections, I think it would be perhaps useful to briefly introduce the applicant before dealing with the terms of the application and then outlining a response to the issues raised. First, these premises are owned and operated by Amber Taverns, who have around 150 pubs across the UK and a growing number in Scotland. I'm pleased to say they pride themselves in operating their premises to high standard and have a comprehensive staff training programme. It's my understanding that these premises operate well and do not cause police or licence standards any issues, and that's, I would suggest, evidenced by the lack of any reference to any issues in the police representation, and there's no objection from licence standards. And usefully and slightly unusually these days, I think it's useful to note that the premises manager lives above the premises, so that assists in keeping an eye on matters, making sure there's no issues on the ground. So the pub itself has been a real success since opening a couple of years ago, and part of this success in my mission is based upon the high quality offering. There was a substantial investment made in the pub prior to opening. The commitment to invest in the premises continues today, with a further £20,000 being ready to be invested in a new beer garden, all going well. I've already addressed your honours briefly in terms of the application. Perhaps just the key point is the terminal hour of 9 PM is accepted for the outdoor area. That's accepted. And perhaps also useful to clarify, there will be no amplified music or anything of the like in the beer garden. It will solely be for the consumption of alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. And maybe it's useful because I know Mr Wilson has said that we've been in the premises 12 times and found no issues within. What I would say is that the operation outside will mirror exactly what's inside. It is effectively taking an operation that works well inside and taking it outside. And part of that, one of the key drivers is, of course, COVID. And you've heard it before, is that more and more people are looking to drink outside, more comfortable being outside, etc. And I think it's also useful to clarify the extent of the beer garden. As you see from the plans, the beer garden is roughly 5 metres by 9 metres. This does not occupy the full extent of the land to the rear of the pub. So there's a vacant space of around 12 metres or so behind the beer garden, and that ties in with Mr Wilson's comments. So there is effectively a buffer zone of 16 metres between the end of the beer garden and the door to flat 1. So what the permission is sought for the area where planning permission has been granted. Hopefully that makes sense. If I turn to the objections, one or two initial comments just regarding the site notice is displayed for the duration. Mickey, who's on the call, can confirm that if that's required. And also, I think there may be some confusion as to what was applied for, and I think this does come from the statutory form that site notice must be published in. And so whilst the site notice has to narrate the current licence hours, there's no change to that whatsoever. For example, I think the emails from Brian and Andrew O'Neill suggested that a later terminal hour sought, and there was some concern around that, but in actual fact, that's what the premises operates, and there's no issues with that. The only complaint we recognise from the premises actual trading relates to the glass bin that's referred to by Brian and Jamie, and Andrew O'Neill. Have I got that name right? Sorry, yes, Brian and Andrew O'Neill. I've spoken to the client and I'm told that happened shortly after opening, and immediate steps were taken to stop that, and that's not happened again. Mr Wilson has made a reference to a planning application in his written submission and also his oral submission. So as I've said, it's quite clear what is applied for today matches up with what was granted by your honours counterpart in the planning committee. And also as well, for if it assists with my submission in relation to the question of ownership of the land is owned by Amber Taverns, and they had to take steps to safeguard ownership of our land, and owing to issues around occupiers liability, etc. So they took the steps to delineate that by way of the fence, and that's not, in my perspective, submission a matter for your honours today. There's also suggestion, and Ms Howie touched upon it in her both written and oral submission today, about antisocial behaviour, etc. and swearing, etc. Those are not issues that my client recognises as being an issue with their current operation, and I would suggest that speculation, and I'll take you through why that will not be the case moving forward, and that's in part due to the due diligence that will be in place, and perhaps it's useful for me to know that our submission is a good application from an experienced operator. The operator has experience managing beer gardens up and down the UK, and they understand the pressure and challenges of operating beer gardens in residential areas. First and foremost, planning permission has been granted, so the area can be used obviously without alcohol if that was required. So planning bodies looked at the matter and determined that there's no prejudice to the residential amenity. So the question today, Your Honours, relates to the sale of alcohol for the area, and I've set out why it's, in my view, consistent with the licence objectives. First of all, I think this area will benefit from developed and a licence. Prior to my client becoming involved, the area was, to be honest and told, a wee bit of an eyesore. It was overgrown, and there was various antisocial behaviour issues, and Your Honour, in other roles in the council, will be familiar with the issues that arise from vacant land, etc. So the area is now clearly delineated and it will be closely monitored. And furthermore, works will be undertaken to improve infrastructure, for example, walls, etc. So work, like I said, £20,000 is going to be invested. So works will be done to improve it. Second areas enclosed and customers will be by and large seated. It will only be accessed through the premises themselves. So customers will have to actually go through premises before they reach a beer garden. So that, as usual, staff will have the chance to assess customers, etc. And there's no music or like in present time on 9 PM. There's also CCTV coverage of outdoor area, and there'll be a constant staff presence, clearing tables, etc. There'll be signage on display advising customers in the residential area and asking customers to be mindful of neighbours, etc. And on a Friday and Saturday, there's actually 3 stewards employed, and 1 will be assigned to supervise the external area. As I've said, the premises manager lives on site, so he's easily contactable. And finally, and importantly, as Your Honour will know, if there are any issues, there's a robust mechanism in place where these issues can be brought to Your Honour's attention through the review application. I'm sure Police and Mr Dixon will keep a close eye on matters. And if there are any issues, then Your Honours can look at that and take appropriate action. So, you know, despite the objections, it's my submission that the application is a good one, and especially in the current climate of demand for outdoor drinking and the like. There may be some misunderstandings of what was applied for, so hopefully I'll be able to clarify that today. And I would move grant subject to any questions Your Honours have.
Thank you, Mr McDougall. Do colleagues have any questions at this point they wish to ask either of the objectors or of Mr McDougall? I don't see any hands up, so I'll lead off. Can I ask Mr McDougall or Douglas, I'm not sure to whom this would be best directed. Councillor Brown, go ahead. Still on mute, Bill.
Right. Some of the stuff I'd noted was being covered. Did I clarify that there will be stewards walking round that particular area while it's being used for drinking? And this has been mentioned, smoking, and unfortunately smokers tend to throw things over the wall. Is there any chance of establishing a smoking area well away from the wall and any of the neighbours?
Thank you, Your Honour. First and foremost, yes, stewards will be in place on a Friday and a Saturday. Those are obviously the busiest nights, so there will be a steward being present then. When there's not stewarding, obviously there will be a robust staff presence and they'll monitor the area on an ongoing basis. In terms of smoking, obviously, smoking can happen outdoors, and it's common in a number of beer gardens. In terms of things being thrown over the wall, I would say when I visit the premises, I think the wall's probably about 8 foot high, and of course there'll be ashtrays provided, etc. I'll perhaps allow Mr Beavers to maybe confirm around whether or not a sort of smoking area can be delineated within the outdoor area, away from the sort of adjacent premises, if that would be helpful.
Beaver.
Good morning. Whilst it's possible to allocate a section for smoking, I would say that because the area is outdoors, because there are significant walls in place, because staff will have a presence there on an ongoing basis, because facilities will be made to put cigarette butts, etc. I would rather have the area open for smoking.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. And I think that's probably quite sensible, given it's actually probably a fairly small area. And like I say, there'll be receptacles on tables, etc., for collection of cigarettes, and staff will clear those on an ongoing basis. That'll be part of the staff duties. And I should say that if your honours were with us to being granted the area, staff would all be retrained effectively in terms of managing the outdoor area, and that would be something that that would be highlighted in the staff training, the importance of making sure there's no issues with smoking.
Thank you. Could I ask about an item which is in most of the objectors' email submissions, which is the statutory notice of signage displayed outside the premises and notification to neighbours within the relevant area? As I began to say earlier, I'm not certain whether Mr McDougall or Douglas, this is best directed to which one of you, but those are two questions which come up in most of the objection letters, and I'm keen to get some clarity on it, whether the procedure was followed.
Yeah, I think I think there's a couple of points, convener, and I'm happy to come in and let Mr McDougall comment further. But I think the first point, I suppose, is in relation to who gets notified in terms of the 2005 Act, and basically notifiable interest is to land within 4 metres of the boundary of the licensed premises. So in the past, what we would have done during the height of the pandemic, Mr Dixon or Mr Breyer would have gone out, and not everyone's got this practice, but that's how we had done it. They would go out and they would deliver to flats, you know, or buildings within the 4 metre zone, as it were, and that has been done as a desktop exercise using GIS on this occasion. And certainly the GIS system seems to show up no premises within the 4 metre boundary, no flats there. So I can't say for certain that there aren't premises that have been missed, convener. What I would say is that for the people that are here today and the other people that have lodged objections, clearly they've had a chance to come back in with that. But that's probably all I can really say about it. The other thing, convener, about the neighbour notification, or rather the site notice, so that was something Mr McDougall's clients had put up. That should have been in place for 21 days. Mr McDougall will be able to clarify that that was the case or not.
Mr McDougall.
Thank you. Yeah, I can confirm the site notice was up for the required duration. I sent that on to the client. That was displayed. It was displayed both at the pub and also at the back wall as well. So that was in place. What I will say is that my reading of the objections is that was noticed at the last day. I don't take the objections to say that the site notice wasn't displayed for that period. In any case, Mick is on the call and he's more than happy to confirm that it was up. So that's being complied with. In terms of the neighbourhood notifications, I would say that quite often there is sometimes surprise about neighbours not being notified, and that's simply, in my view, due to the short distance that's required to be notified. It's far shorter than the planning, so that often causes confusion because you might be notified for a planning application but not for a licensing application, and that's just because of the difference in distance that requires to be notified. So if your honours officers are saying that the neighbourhood notification is carried out, then I would suggest that your honours should proceed on that basis.
Many thanks, Douglas. I'm having a little trouble with my audio this morning. Can I just clarify that you're saying that the determination of who would be contacted was carried out using the council's mapping system, GIS, and all who were should have been where?
Yeah, the GIS system was used, and Connie has given me kind of demonstrations of how the system works. Basically, you choose the point where the licensed area would be, and it's not throwing up there's any premises within the, it should list the premises within that area. And so, for example, if there were 6 flats in the building, it should tell us flat 15.1 to flat 15.6 or flat 5.1 to 5.6 or whatever, and that wasn't coming up. I will, after the meeting, contact the GIS team just to make sure that things are working as they should be. But certainly that was what came from the system that we used to do the 4 metres notification, convener, that there was nothing in the area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson, you raised the distance from premises to door. Only fair to let you have your say in this as well.
It's okay. I think maybe what has happened is that the area in the plan for the licensed beer garden was 16 metres away from the front door. And therefore, it would, the front door to flat 1, and therefore it would not be within the 4 metres. The fact that they built a fence 3 metres in front of the door to flat 1 was at the end of their piece of land, but the first 13 metres of that is not. The first 13 metres of that is not in the licensed area. So you're with me? So the licensed area was never closer than 4 metres.
I see.
The fence they erected in front of flat 1 was only 3 metres away. Very irritating, though.
So I apologise for that. I'm not sure where the extraneous noises are coming from.
It's my phone's ringing. I'm trying to turn it off.
I could hear mine ringing in the kitchen. I'm very glad it wasn't in the room with us. Do any other colleagues have questions or comments on the application or the points made by the objectors? I don't see any hands at the moment. Okay. That being the case, we're moving on to summaries. Chief Inspector, anything to add in summary?
No, nothing in addition, and we're content, obviously, with the time for 2100 hours being agreed.
Many thanks. Mr. Wilson, so your chance to just sum up your position for the members of the board.
I've said it all. I'm only out the back door occasionally, and it's not really for me to whine too much. But the people with children here, particularly Kathleen next door, who's very, very upset, although she might not have objected. She's got four children, and there's 2 young children downstairs, and I think they have a much stronger case. And Miss Howie as well has 2 grandchildren, and they also have a stronger case, I think, than me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Miss Howie, this is your chance, just the same to summarise your position.
Okay, I mean, I've highlighted all my concerns, and I do think we really need to have a proper site visit just to establish how close this is to the garden. The smoking was mentioned, and it seems that you're not going to be putting in a smoking area per se, so that's a huge concern also. I think it's fair enough to say that you can put up a notice to say to be mindful of neighbours, but can you really control drunk people to be mindful of anything, let alone neighbours and you know, the very over the wall really? My concern is I'm not going to be able to use my garden once this beer garden's up and running due to the swearing, which that's going to impact my life hugely. The garden is a great joy to have. So that could be taken away from me. I think this has got potential for really life-changing, life-changing events with this beer garden going ahead. I do think it could affect the price of my property. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be attractive for someone looking to purchase a property in first place. When you're looking directly out of the window at people drinking. Again, I just wanted to emphasise that this is not a restaurant, bar, family run, family friendly. It is just a drinking den. So it's really just boozers that are drinking from 11 in the morning, and they're going to be there all day till 9 at night. As much as they can say that they'll control it, I don't expect that to happen. It's just words really. So again, the smoking, the language, the health and safety aspect, I find huge, and I think the whole thing needs to be looked at from the start, and I think a site visit needs to be guaranteed. No one's really taken on board how close this is. Also, the 4 metres, the 4 metres to a building, what about the 4 metres to a garden? This is literally over a wall to someone's garden. I just don't think it's acceptable.
Well, the 4 metres is set out in legislation, so we're kind of bound to follow what it says.
So is it not 4 metres to a garden then? Is it, you know, what's the impact of that? So is it just 4 metres to the actual building, or is it 4 metres to a garden?
Douglas will be able to help us.
Yeah, it's 4 metres to neighbouring land, convener, as the notification distance.
Thank you. There's a few things just before we go into recess. Miss Howing set your case out very eloquently indeed. I did just want to make it quite clear, unless you think the board was ignoring it, that we wouldn't have regard to the point. I think you actually mentioned this in your earlier submission. We wouldn't have any consideration to impact on house prices. That's not something that would fall within the purview of the board. So if it is mentioned, it's not because we haven't heard it, it's just ultra vires to this board.
So can I just confirm, has there been a breach then with the 4 metre rule, with it being literally to the garden? You know, that I didn't get notification. So
well, I think, convener, I mean, obviously these are matters that the board can consider in recess as to where it takes them. What I would say is Miss Howie, I mean, Miss Howie is here today, so I mean she's managed to object to the application as far as Miss Howie is concerned. But obviously it'll be matters the board may want to discuss in recess.
That you basically take the words out of my mouth. This is the next but I'll bring in a second, Mr. Wilson. The next step in this consideration of this item is that the elected members of the offices will go into a private recess for discussion and then come back, possibly ask more questions and or move towards a decision one way or the other. And all the points that have been raised on both sides will be considered in that private recess. Mr. Wilson, you had your hand up?
Yeah. The impression it was 4 metres from the building, metres from the land, then all of us are like 18 inches from, it's 18 inches away. So there's no way in the world that there's anywhere more than 4 metres from the back garden. So I think I was misinformed, or it is in fact from the building. I'm not sure which is which now.
Convener, I think it may be helpful if I read basically what the legislation says is, and I'll quote it directly: a person has a notifiable interest in neighbouring land if that person is the occupier of the land, and it's under the Licence Procedure Scotland Regulations 2007. Land is neighbouring land for the purpose of subsection 1A if it is within 4 metres in any direction of any boundary of the premises to which the application relates. So I think Mr. Wilson said that from the licensed premises, it was basically about 13 metres.
Right.
That's only part of the garden. It's 18 inches, almost right down the middle of the garden. It's 18 inches away from the licensed premises, and we should all have been notified on that basis. And if we'd all been notified, we would have put a much more comprehensive objection in.
Yeah, in my case, it is actually
last day.
Just a moment. Your point has been raised, it has been noted, and it will be considered when we go into private recess. I'm not talking over you to try to anything, but I just want to make it quite clear that I'm listening to what you're saying.
No, I didn't mean that at all, but I was confused about it, and I was trying to make it clear.
Absolutely, Mr. Wilson. Miss Howie, you had a point to make?
Yes, I think we've got different aspects to the garden. So you've got where Mr. Wilson's building is slightly different from where my own is. My own building and garden is directly where this beer garden will be. So that in that case, it would be 18 inches away from my garden.
Right, yeah, thank you. I'll have to leave it at that because it was supposed to be a summary rather than a question and answer part of it, but we got some good information. Nevertheless, we will now move to a private recess.
Sorry, can I sum up, please?
Oh, I do apologise, Mr.
No, it's okay. But I'm obliged.
Fire away.
Thanks, Una. So as you heard me say, it's a good application by experienced operator. Planning permissions in place. In my submission, there's no factual basis for any concerns from the neighbouring residents. The outdoor area will be managed in a robust fashion, and as your honours will know far better than myself, smoking is not a relevant consideration for yourselves. Smoking can happen in this area without there being a licence in place. There's no licence required for an area to be used for smoking, and in fact, If it is licensed, then smoking will happen at tables, etc., spread out, and there'll be ashtrays, etc., available within easy reach. And you yourself confirmed that the impact on house prices is not a relevant consideration. There's also been mention of health and safety and issues around that. And in actual fact, I've suggested to Your Honours that in actual fact there'll be improvements in that regard, given the investment in the area. The walls will be improved, etc., and there'll be works done to make the area safer. So in actual fact, it would be a real positive here. In terms of the neighbourhood notification, I think at the end of the day, the licensing board officers have carried out a desktop exercise using the GIS mapping, and if it assists, this is the way a number of our licensing boards carry out without issue. And what I would say is that does not appear to me at any party's prejudice. The local residents are here today, but we have submitted emails of objection, etc., and they're on the call today. So I don't think that's an issue, and I think we should take it as read that the people that made an objection are here today to speak to it. And finally, if there are issues that are an actual complaints about the operation, then it can be brought back to Your Honours, and we'll back here, I imagine, pretty quickly, having to explain ourselves as to what's went wrong. So subject to that, move grant to the application. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. McDougall. We will now move to a private recess. Those who are here who are not officers or elected members will be invited to leave the meeting, and you'll be brought back in when we've finished our deliberations. Thank you.